Winter can often look really dull, right? Like in these photos here. If we were to paint that, we could only use white and some grays, right? Well, it's not necessary. We can change the colors completely, and I will show you how I painted this colorful winter scene. I always begin with a rough sketch, and this gives me a better idea where I should position stuff later. And just use any color that you feel like using. It doesn't really matter. For example, you wouldn't normally use yellow as a snow color, at least if not dirty is what you want to accomplish, but really any color can work. You paint over the underpainting and you can completely cover it, so if you end up not liking the color you chose, you can just cover it. No big deal. I tend to use this color in my underpaintings, the reddish color. I really like how it looks, but I don't know how it's called because it didn't have a name on it, but it's from a brand. The original photo which I'm using to paint this scene, and I took it myself by the way, didn't have an interesting sky, but because I want to make the painting colorful, I will add a very dramatic sky here with some violets, oranges, anything that comes to your mind. I've seen artists make even green look good in the sky, so really any color can work. I've never used green in the sky. I have no idea how I would make that work, but it can be done. So as you can see, we have some crazy colors right now. When we mix pastels with alcohol, they become very vibrant. The orange didn't really show through before on the paper, but when we mix it with alcohol, the orange becomes really well, like an orange. So you may be thinking we have way too much, for example, yellow on the floor because that's snow and it looks very weird, but that doesn't matter. In the beginning, just block in some colors and we will fix it later, if fixing will be needed. I'm not sure whether or not you like watching the entire process of me blocking color and going over it with alcohol, um, or if you would prefer this part to be a bit sped up and quicker, so we would focus on the upper layers. Just please let me know in the comments because I'm never sure how much of the underpainting I should leave, and I don't want to bore you if this is not what you want to see. So I'm finishing the underpainting now, and once you finish the underpainting, it will be dry in a few minutes. It dries very quickly, quicker than water. Here I'm just adding some footprints and stuff like that, and that's done completely on random, which is why it looks weird. But as I said, The underpainting is just a rough sketch, um, which we will refine later. I always forgot to mention, I'm always using pastel matte paper. Okay, so it's dry now and we can begin with layers of pastel. I often like to start more in the background because I think that things naturally look more in the background if you actually paint it before the things in the foreground. But I do still, for example, paint branches in the trees by painting in the sky. So I do paint background on the foreground objects, but I like to avoid that if possible. Up until now, I've only used armbands, and you will see the almost the whole painting was done with only armbands, so they are quite useful. If you don't know the difference between handmade soft pastels and rembrandt, you can watch my video. I made two videos on that. Anyway, rembrandts are harder than handmade soft pastels, so I use them before I use super soft pastels because they don't fill in the paper that much, so I can get a lot more layers on the paper. I'm sorry for always repeating that. Um, if you are a regular watcher of my videos, I really do get asked about that a lot, so that's why I mention it in almost every video. So, since I chose the colors that look like a sunset, I'm gonna do a sunset, which is why I'm adding in some warm colors, so a deep orange and a red on the trees. And you can notice I'm only adding it on the sides facing the center of the painting. I want the center of the painting to have the sun, so I want the sun to be positioned there. And you can often see artists make the sides that are close to the sun more warm. And this does sometimes happen in nature, but it doesn't always happen. But it often looks good in paintings, which is why I also like doing that. I'm painting in the tree trunks, and that's interesting because you can see I'm not actually painting the tree trunks themselves, but I'm painting the snow behind the tree trunks, and that makes the dark color look like they are tree trunks and the tree. I also added some lines, and this indicates where the user should go with his eyes. Um, the That's actually a path, so it does make sense to have lines there. You can just add it anywhere. Well, you can, but maybe that would look weird. But the reason why I wanted to add it here specifically is because it leads the viewer's eyes towards the center of the painting. So now I'm making the snow look more like it's actually snow, because the color underneath that looked too yellow. And when we do it that way, we can still see some parts glowing too. And in my opinion, that looks prettier than if we were to just paint one color right at the beginning. If we were to just pick that bluish color and just cover everything with it. You can see on the floor we have some yellows, violets, different blues, and I personally think that looks prettier. If you also like that effect and would like to achieve it, be sure to have some different colors underneath the pastel you're trying to glaze over, and be sure to use very gentle pressure. If you just press it hard on the paper, it won't show anything too. Oh, and until now, I've still used only rare brands. I didn't need to use those super soft pastels, which are crazy expensive, so if you can't afford them, I would really look into rare brands because you can do most of the things with them, and they are really not that expensive. The whole set of 120 pastels cost me less than $50. And you don't need that big of a set. You can buy just 30 or something like that. The important thing to note about them is that they are still professional quality and they are light fast, meaning they don't fade over time. Because if you buy some cheap pastels, they fade quite easily, and I'm not talking about in 20 years, I'm talking about days or months here. It depends on where the painting is. If it's in the direct sunlight, then the colors will fade very easily. But if it's not, it will take longer, but they will fade with very cheap pastels. So when buying pastels, you have to make sure they are labeled as light fast. And this pretty blue I'm using here is from Senlier, and this is a handmade super soft one. Again, Rembrandt. You can notice we almost didn't touch the sky after the underpainting, and this is because I quite like the way it is, so I don't really need to cover it with another layer. I'm adding in some purples more in the background, and this makes everything look more consistent with the sky because we have a violet sky, and it looks more connected that way. I hope this was helpful in any way. If not, please tell me what you would like to hear, and thank you for watching.